we can take the stress on us because we're used to do it. We've moved people in so many different countries. We are prepared to help them get through that. I'm your person to make sure your transition is successful. As long as you listen to me, as long as you trust me, everything will be fine.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Relocation Leader. I'm your host, Zac Turbes, and today we have a very awesome guest with us. Her name's Anna Telinhos, and she is a lead account executive for our NEI offices in Geneva, Switzerland. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, Zach. Thank you so much for having me.
So, we brought you on the podcast because you have a very, very unique perspective on relocation. You've relocated 3 times and you've crossed the ocean 2 times, right?
Indeed.
And you get to share with us being an account executive who has, walked many people through many moves, kind of like what your perspective is, having had to move yourself in those many times. So, for those who aren't familiar, do you want to just kind of give a synopsis of, what your role is at NEI? What do you do on a regular basis? And then we can jump into your experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. So I'm a lead account executive with NEI sitting in Geneva, like you said, and I'm basically moving people, families from one country to another, mainly intra Europe now. When I was in the US, I was also doing the inbound America. So I'm discovering a new market. And I'm also helping the team growing, training, and getting also confident in their position.
And so you've moved 3 times. Do you want to give
Indeed.
us a flyover, a kind of a 30,000 foot view of, what your moves were like, and then we'll jump into your most impactful move, which I think I know what that's going to be.
Sure. So I think each move has been so different because the first one was like years ago for my bachelor degree, and I was literally just a student moving into a new country, still in Europe, really easy in terms of culture, with absolutely no skills in English. Just so you and I are clear, and you just kind of like take it as it goes because you young, you student, so it's easy. The second time was in 2015, and that was also a big one because I moved with my husband in the US. This time I was just the spouse following, so absolutely no position, just my visa was not allowing me to work, so I was in the shoes of the person just following the family. And then the most recent one, which is not recent anymore, 'cause it's been 2.5 years, was in 2022 when we decided to come back to Europe with 2 children this time. So definitely another type of relocation. And this time I was the one moving with a job and my husband was following. So I guess I've kind of like touched on every single aspect in the relo and approach each experience differently because I was also a different person every single time.
Now, going into the last move,
Mhm.
it's quite different because you were actually your job was to help people move at that
Yeah.
point. And so, do you want to explain kind of what your mindset was going into that move? Kind of what you thought you were, capable of, and kind of, what was it like in the very beginning when you decided that you guys were going to move back to France?
So I guess from a relocation standpoint, I just thought it would be easy. You've done that many times. You've been moving people many times in different countries. You just think it's going to be a piece of cake. And the only thing is that you forget that your country has changed while you were away. And you also forgot that you had 2 children to move along. So you have so many different perspectives to think about, which I haven't experienced myself. I mean, through my employees, yes, but never for myself, such as like daycare, all of that. So I have to say, if I remember, we decided to start with the relo sometime the last quarter or the third quarter of the year. And I was still pregnant with my son, and I told my husband, "Oh, we'll be fine. He'll be fine." And in January, you dive in because you're like, "Okay, we are like a month away. Now it's time to get, to start looking into things." And then you're like, "Oh, I forgot I needed a daycare." And then you kind of like putting things together, and then you start panicking. So I think I probably was just not I did not prepare myself enough, and I just went through it fully blind. I figured it out eventually, but I think I was just super relaxed, probably too much.
It's almost like your competence in that area allowed you to be, kinda have your guard down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that I moved so many people for so many years because I've been doing them since 2019. So you've seen the situation. You're just like, yeah, I know. I have some my employees who've experienced that, and they taught me a lot actually by moving them. So I was pretty confident everything will be fine. And I think, yeah, just having that knowledge made me feel maybe a little bit too confident. And my husband was like 100% confident in me as well. He lets me do it, but it's actually a little bit different when you have to apply those items to use, because you are on your own and you just need to make sure you're not forgetting anything.
Yes. So if you wanna walk us through kind of when you had to make your big move back to France, um, what were the things that you initially started with? And then kind of like how did that branch out into more things as you got going?
Yeah, so I guess my our main priority was to sell my property because we had a property in the US. So that was like priority number one. What am I going to do with it? Then you think about keeping the property because the United States are part of our lives. So we were thinking about maybe coming back and visit once in a while. But then you start thinking, well, wait, if I do that and I put it for rent, am I going to have to pay tax in the US and in France because I'm going to get a rent into my property? So then that opened a question like, is that the right thing to do for us? And once you figure that piece out, you're like, okay, if I sell it, when am I supposed to sell that? And if I get basically money out of it, when am I supposed to transfer that funds? And if I do, am I going to have to pay tax on that? Like, so every single thing that we were thinking about just like open up additional question. Then you think about daycare. Okay, so my baby is about to be born. I do have the oldest daughter. Is she supposed to go to school? Because then guess what? I forgot that in France they have to go to school within their third year. So my daughter was 3.5 at that time, so she had to go to school. I totally forgot it was a mandatory item. And I haven't even looked at schooling. Then you start thinking about like, okay, what document do I need to get her enrolled to school? Which school am I going to? And it's just like those things that I haven't thought about until I actually start listing out my things. So like selling your home, finding a school for your child, and then you try to find a puppy for yourself over there. And then you start thinking, how am I going to do that? Where do I need to start? And then when you start, they start asking you thousands of questions and documents. And you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't have those documents. So, how am I going to get them? Where do I start? Who can I talk to? Who can understand my situation? Because a lot of people have never really relocated, right? You don't meet a lot of expat unless you actually do the job or you work in an environment that makes you meet these people. And so it was hard to like explain. Then once you find a house, you're like, okay, now what do I do? How do I select my internet provider? What do you need for me to select my internet provider? A bank account? Okay, I can do that. Oh, I can do that now? Okay, when can I do that? In 3 weeks? Oh, okay. So then you just have like all of those questions that add up as you start thinking about the main item. Yeah.
Could you explain, I guess, how working with like an account executive like yourself can help navigate some of those banking issues that people might experience when moving abroad?
I think the first thing when you work as an account executive like me or my colleague is that we understand what is going to happen when you arrive. And I think it's all about setting the right expectations. As I told you at the beginning, I literally went there like totally blind. I haven't really informed myself. And that's the risk when you do things on your own, is that you just dive in without really knowing, or you think you know, but you happen not really to know everything. Well, when you have someone like us guiding you through it, we will tell you, okay, just be ready because opening up a bank account can potentially take a little bit longer than what you used to. That will guide you through every single step of the way. We'll tell you ahead of time which documents you need. We'll also tell you most of the people that I know I'm moving, they get temporary housing, and that helped them because they know why they are in temporary housing. They still have time to open up that bank account and then look for a property afterwards. And this is very important for them to know. And I think that's why we're here to really help them understand, set expectations, understand what happened, and just be confident that by following our guidelines, everything will be fine. And I think that's really important. And that's why I enjoy doing my job because I really help them. And you see the difference between someone who just does it without asking question. They come back to you a few weeks later and say, "Hey, finally, I might need your help." And then the ones who are really listening and they do have the smooth transition because they were just prepared. We were here to let them know what to expect.
And it is different even when you do have the knowledge like yourself.
Yeah,
When you're in the shoes of somebody moving, all the stressors are real and you don't have that same level of objectivity as, say the account executive would have, being able to look
exactly.
at things on your behalf and make calls and speak up.
And I think what we do is we have that ability to step back. We can take the stress on us and we will be just fine because we're used to do it. And we've seen so many different situations. We've moved people in so many different countries that we are prepared to help them get through that. We just, the way I see my role is like, I'm not your friend because we always have to set that boundary, but I'm your person to make sure your transition is successful. As long as you listen to me, as long as you trust me, everything will be fine. And I typically always say that in my introduction call with them because I want them to understand that yes, we'll have policy to follow. But sometimes I'm gonna have to say no because I can say yes to everything. But if they trust me, if they trust the process, it will just be smooth. And most of the times it does happen. And I think it's such a great help to have people like me helping them through that process for sure.
Did you want to give any insight on, what it was like for you to navigate property, getting a property in France, getting your car in France, anything like that, that, would shed a little bit more light on kind of what it's like if you're trying to navigate this stuff all on your own?
Yeah. So when you start looking for a property, there's a lot of different laws in countries that you need to be aware of. For example, you can't spend more than 30% of your income towards your rent. Okay. So that's probably going to set the criteria for the home search. Obviously, when you're a family of four, you would like to have, if possible, 3 bedroom in a property. Depending on which location you're living, if you're only making, I'm just making numbers, 1,000 euros per month, you won't be able, you believe you can pay 800 per month towards your housing. The agencies are just not going to look at your file at all because you will already be over the law on that percentage. So they're just not going to show you any property. So that's one. The second thing is you need to understand which agencies you could potentially reach out to and how to explain your situation. You don't have any French paperwork. Well, yeah, you have your ID card, but like you don't have any tax income from France or who knows how long. You don't have any social security number yet. You don't have your bank account ready. And you cannot show them that you have funds in the country to be able to help you out with your file to be selected as a tenant. And so it's this constant situation where you have to explain where you come from. You have to explain your situation and a lot of people are just not prepared for that because they think that you can just arrive in a country, open your bank account, someone will give you a property. It doesn't work this way because the landlords, they have so many applicants that you really need to be attractive to them. If you don't check the boxes, they probably won't even look at your application. And it's the same thing when you get to purchase a car. You want to buy a car, but you don't have the funds on your account. So you're trying to ask the bank if they would give you a loan so you could purchase a car. But you can't get a loan unless you have payslip in the country, tax information, tax document, and then also show them that you have a lease agreement into place for quite a long time because they need to show that you've been a good payer. All right. But you just got your rent last week. So you don't have enough bill to show them that you've been paying your bills because you haven't paid any. So basically the bank says, no, we don't give you a loan. And then you're like, okay, but I haven't been able to transfer all of my funds from the US yet because I'm capped every day on how much I can actually transfer over. So you go to the dealer store, you find your car, you think you're going to be able to buy it, then they say no. So you need to find a solution on how to get those funds. The other very fun story, because I know you like when I do those comparison with the US. I remember with my husband, we wanted to buy a car in Omaha. Then we walk into that dealer store and then we tried a few car. We found one that we like, and then they kept it for a little while. We signed the document. And the guy was like, "Oh, we're gonna get the car ready so you can go ahead. So maybe you can just go have lunch, you come back in an hour, and then your car will be ready." And then my husband and I looked at each other and were like, "Do you mean we're taking the car like today?" Yeah, yeah, why wouldn't you? Oh, fun. So we just left with the car. And once we came back, walk into that dealer store after some time, finally got to find a car that would fit the stroller, the car seat, like everything. We went ahead and pay a portion of it. And then I said, okay, then we'll just leave. And then I could just drop off the rental car. And then he's like, no, you're going to have the car maybe in 2 to 3 weeks or so when it's ready. I'm like, when it's ready for what? Like, it's ready. It's good to go. It's like, no, we need to do the paperwork. And then we have to send those things to the government and stuff like that. I'm like, 2 additional weeks for the rental car? Really? The car is just here sitting on the parking lot. Like, why can I take it? So again, you just face that bureaucracy because you just forgot that they also have their side to do from a paperwork standpoint. And so another story that took a very long time when we've forgot about it, because in the US, you just walking and then you leave in your car. Easy peasy, right? Those things you don't really anticipate them because you think it's just you've been used to your country, which the United States was mine for 7 years. So you've been used to that American culture, which is what we see with most of our employees, right? And so if you don't explain them, this is what you're gonna have to go through until you can actually get a car. They will just be very surprised and most of the time very stressed out about it because they need to move around.
So when you're thinking about companies that primarily use lump sums, their employees, they're giving a lot of decisions to those employees to be able to, you know, figure out the path forward,
Yeah.
maybe with some assistance, but, certainly the primary decision making is in their hands. Why should companies think more about, um, you know, adjusting their policies, given your experience?
I think the way I see the lump sum program, in my opinion, this should be provided to employees that we know based on the discussion that maybe the employee will have had with their company, they know that they might not need a lot of things. Okay. So a few example, you have sometimes we have someone who moved only 6 months ago from Germany to the UK, and this person got hired with client B and he says, okay, I've just been away from my country for 6 months. I already have my bank account. I basically still have my life there, more or less. I only need to find a property. I think a lump sum would make sense because that person hasn't been away from the country for a very long time. They are still set in the country, so they don't really have thousands of things to think about. We as account executive, when we get those lump sum buys, we can still refer them to some of our provider if we want to. They use the lump sum to pay for the benefit, but since they have very limited needs, they should be able to work this out and work with our partner to get through that relocation. Providing a lump sum to someone who is moving, who has never relocated in the past, who is moving maybe with a family or even alone, but from one continent to another with different culture, and they have to start from scratch. To me, a lump sum doesn't make sense because these people, they just don't know. And even if you think that they are, even if it's a young person, I know a lot of people think that, oh, he was born in 2000. Yes, we're moving people from 2000. Oh, he was born in 2000. He'll be fine. He's young. He'll adjust. Well, not necessarily, because that person has probably maybe always lived with his parents or her parents and never been through being an independent person. They don't know anything about the country. They've just never been through it. So you're just going to throw them into the jungle with a lump sum, figure it out. So I think the lump sum needs to be used for very specific type of profile. For other individual, like I've been through with my relocation, they need to have actual services and actual support. With the lump sum, you're just not going to go anywhere. Just paying the deposit of the property is going to take the full amount of the lump sum, you know, or securing an Airbnb for temporary housing. It's going to take 50% of the lump sum. So they basically won't do anything with that. So the way I say it is like lump sum fine, but for very specific profile. Keep using your policy, rewrite the policy to make sure it fits the need that people can have when they are moving now in 2024. Because that's what matters. The world has changed. And while money can make you happy, it doesn't really help so much for relo. It does a little bit, but you do need to have that physical support 100%.
And what would be the most valuable if you had to go back and kind of do your move over again?
Hmm.
What services to you would have been the most valuable to take advantage of if you had to do it a second time?
Oh, easy question. Departure services. So I know exactly what I need to do while moving out from the US, closing out my 401k. How do I close out my health insurance? All of that. Number one. Oh, and the medical things for the children and the destination services. Believe me, the struggle to open up a bank account, to get a car, to find a property while you have to do your job at the same time and also take care of your family, to me, this is just something that's too challenging. So departure services, destination services, 100%.
Nice.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
So, and what is your outlook like after the move now? So it took you a little while to adjust to get all those things done. Um, you know, I'm sure that providing relocation services can shrink that timeline a little bit, but how does everything you went through affect kind of the way you're living right now?
I think I'm just taking life a little bit more relaxed on the relaxed side. I'm just like, every problem has a solution, you know? I feel like even if the solution comes in 3 weeks, it'll come. You gain that positivity and that mindset. You just take every day as they come and you just learn how to go through those challenges a little bit easier because you know you're able to do it. You're capable of doing it. And I think we're just taking life like everything is easy now. It's been tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's been tough, and I always tell my employees relocating is an amazing experience. You guys are just going to enjoy it. Just take it. It's awesome. Just be prepared because for the first 6 to 12 months, it's going to be difficult. See, I'm 2.5 years in, and we've only been able to really feel settled down for about a year. Took us a year and a half to actually go through it. Can you imagine a year and a half in your life? It's just a lot. So, yeah, I think if I have to move again, I will. Probably not tomorrow, but if I have to move again, I will maybe go back to the US one day. But I will again take it with a little more. I would just say, okay, it's going to be difficult, but you do it. That's the thing. You can do it.
Nice. Last question. So, if you could take one thing from the US and bring it to France with you, what would it be?
Oh, I have a thousand. I have to choose only one. Um, I think I would go for the easy way to have your account, like all of your administrative item done. It's so easy. I would vote for that. Yep.
Hey,
Yeah,
okay.
I have thousands of things on my list, like the drive-through pharmacy,
Yeah.
or like the easy way to find a doctor. That would also be on my list. But I think from a relocation standpoint, things that I will, if I could bring this over with me, it would have been to be able to get those things done way easier, like bank account and social security number. Even like finding a property, seriously, in the US, it's so easy. If I have to put relocation aside, I miss everything about the US. The drive-through pharmacy, the takeaway, your Starbucks coffee when you have to go to work and it's freezing outside. And then it's just everybody is so friendly. You walk in, you go to Walmart, you say hi, the lady just says the rest. It's just that friendly approach that I've experienced. Not that people are not friendly here, it's just different. In the US, I feel like you're just used to have people from across the world in your country, and it just makes it easier for us to adjust. I would probably bring that too.
Nice. So she snuck in like 3 or 4 things. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. You did great. Anna, we want to thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me and looking forward for the next one.
Thanks for watching another episode of Relocation Leader, and we will see you back in 2 weeks.